Why are we talking about aging today? Some of you might have already heard that in 2015, the number of people over 65 exceeded the number of people under 15 for the first time in human history. By 2030, 1 in 6 people will be age 60 or over. And this demographic shift will present complex challenges to us. How will we manage increasing chronic health conditions in a health system that was designed when the population average age was 27? How can we design technologies that can allow people to age in place rather than in long-term care? So McMaster is home to researchers who are addressing questions across science, engineering, humanities, business, social sciences, and across a variety of aging research platforms like the Optimal Aging Portal, the Canadian Longitudinal Studies on Aging, the Gilbert Center for Studies on Aging. And MIRA really exists to bring all of those people together and those platforms and connect them so that they can do interdisciplinary research that will lead to impactful solutions. At MIRA's inception, we set out to ask how might we support research so the many strengths at McMaster can be leveraged and translate that science into impact. And how might we position our researchers for success in a funding climate, if you're familiar with research funding, that increasingly demands a history of collaboration, working together and integrating end users. In our case, those might be older adults, caregivers, and others. And how can we begin to address wicked problems in aging? So how do we do that? You'll be thrilled to hear it's design thinking. So we heard from Robert Fleisig earlier. He actually worked with us at MIRA's inception with his colleague Harry Miller, created this framework, which I found really useful. So what we're really trying to do is develop and fund research in that sweet spot and the potential innovations in the middle of this slide. So where need, possibility, and opportunity intersect. And I often ask our researchers, where does most academic research happen? Do you think it's within the realm of what's possible? Is it a reaction to an opportunity, a funding opportunity? How often are the needs of users considered? Another way to conceptualize design thinking that's been very useful for us is this figure here. So we have these people that you might find yourself placed somewhere along this two-dimensional graph. The idea is that a really excellent idea needs to run through this, running sort of clockwise around this figure, and if a person could do all of these things, then they might be able to do that on their own, but most people cannot do all of these things equally. So we want to bring in people who are skilled in each of these 4 areas. So this is taken from Min Bazadar. You might have heard of him. He's also a collaborator at McMaster. And so thinking about organizations as having people representing these quadrants, a lot of times they don't have people in the space that you might need them, particularly generators are missing. So people who are generating the ideas, who talk to humans, who find out what their problems are, who understand them. People who are doing well in their careers are often really great implementers, but if we're missing someone in that cycle, it's difficult to do this innovative work. The MIRA approach, we fund research at McMaster, so we have a really a carrot that we're able to use, and we support over $400,000 in work each year, and you might say, where do I sign up? But we would say, this comes with a few caveats. The first is that our funded projects must be interdisciplinary. We say they must involve usually 3 or more disciplines. And this 3 faculty minimum sounds arbitrary to some people, but what it does is help us to make sure there's someone in each of those quadrants, someone in the before phase. What is the problem? What are people feeling? What are they experiencing? And someone in that after phase. What are you going to do with this? How are you going to make it work? How are you going to implement it? The second is that it's an iterative approach. We might say that's a great idea, yes, but have you thought about involving someone who has expertise in implementation science? Can we connect you with a partner in the shelter network? Do you know someone across campus? They're actually doing this work, but in a different population. And finally, our projects must demonstrate involvement and benefits to stakeholders and users who may be older adults or others. So how do we apply this? How would we apply the expertise and the capacity at McMaster, like these fine people here, to wicked problems in aging? I'm going to hand it over to them to tell you more about it, but I want to leave you with this. You can get involved too. Everyone here is a stakeholder in aging. We're all aging. If you want to be part of it, maybe you'd like to share your lived experience with aging challenges, you can reach out to us. You can join our mailing list. You can come to our public events. You might be interested in joining our advisory committees. So there's the contact information.
My name is Nicole Delmer, and I'm an assistant professor in the Department of Health, Aging, and Society at McMaster. And my research and my teaching really take up the intersections of aging and technologies from a social science point of view. So I'll be kicking off my very short talk here with an overview of age tech, and I'll follow up with some more concrete examples that will hopefully help move our conversations forward. So digital technologies and innovations are really viewed as key tools in meeting the goal of supporting or strengthening older adults' abilities to age well, including their ability to age in their homes and in their communities. Different digital technologies like sensors, domestic robots, medication reminders, and even smartwatches play a really key role in the imagining and the shaping of our aging futures. Some digital tracking and monitoring devices and technologies are marketed directly to older adults as products that encourage active, socially connected, risk-averse lifestyles, while others form part of the growing e-health economy, enabling more home-based, efficient, and cost-effective management of care for older adults. And so what we're seeing is really, the body, the family, the home, and the community, and different spaces of care as different domains to be managed and organized through technologies that support older adults' health and well-being through tracking and monitoring. And while the age tech industry is certainly, it is booming as the integration of different technological tools and innovations into everyday policy and practices is really seen as serving both the desires of aging individuals and alleviating the potential public burden of aging population. What my research and the folks that I work with, we try to trouble both the dominant approaches to aging and technology that have often been overly reliant on outdated stereotypes of older adults as kind of technophobic, and also troubling the underlying assumptions about the ways in which technologies can and will necessarily solve the problems of older age. And so one project that centers older adults' voices and experiences with technologies that I'd like to briefly highlight is my Aging in Place with Public Libraries project, a project that draws on my own background in library and information sciences that really seeks to bring attention to the role local public library branches play in bolstering social inclusion or feelings of connectedness among older adults. And it's through this project that I think we can begin to see the intersections of older age, technology, and creativity unfolding. Looking at the different ways to address social isolation is really so crucial and especially timely as socially isolated older adults have poor health outcomes and more complex support needs. And therefore, they often require access to a complement of community-based supports like public libraries to thrive and experience that sense of belonging in their community. And so as I spoke with 51 older adults across Ontario about the significance of the public library in their everyday life, they really highlighted their library branch as a crucial community space that serves to bridge the digital divide, where they can borrow, use, and learn about different technologies and digital devices, and where they can access a range of materials, programs, and services and spaces, and of particular focus here, digital support and training in a space where they can build relationships with library staff and other patrons, and really importantly, in a space where there's no expectation of payment. Older adults turn to their library branches for a plethora, a myriad of technological related questions, supports, and access needs. And what I found is that older adult library patrons' conversations really revealed the really many intricate ways that libraries accommodate the transactions of everyday life, including the practical role libraries play in providing access to digital and technical infrastructures and resources. Printers were really popular, photocopiers, computers, Wi-Fi hotspots. All of the different creative tools and devices in library makerspaces like sewing machines, 3D printers, kitchen tools, and sound recording devices, as well as, and importantly, the instruction and support from library staff to be able to fully maneuver and use these different digital tools. The library as a point of community access for these tech tools really enables not only work, but also play and opportunities for creative expression, and also enables connections to family and friends, being able to use Zoom and Skype or FaceTime, for example. And so for those older adults who might not have internet access at home or perhaps have limited data on their cell phones, we can see how public libraries really offer a bridge for the digital divide. that some library patrons have to navigate in their everyday lives, whether due to gaps in skill or access, or perhaps both. And so I think what's really interesting for me, perhaps, we can really begin to see the link between public libraries' technology provision, free internet access or training opportunities, to a reduction in the digital divide and a reduction in social exclusion among library patrons. I'll begin to wrap up here with what I think are potentially exciting avenues moving forward in working with older adults about their technological use, and that's through the use of different creative visual arts-based methods. Quite often what we see in research and in marketing is that technologies that are specifically marketed for or created for older adults have very poor uptake, often because they're developed without input from older adults and because they don't align with older adults' lived experiences about their changing digital worlds. And so one way that I think we can more authentically and fulsomely highlight older adults' experiences as it relates to tech is through creative methods. So this might include really low-tech methods, such as having floor plans or maps that older adults can draw or doodle on as they relay the kinds of technologies they currently use or might wish to use or prefer to use in their homes. So in this exercise, for example, our research team uncovered that as much as older adults integrate different high and low-tech options in their everyday lives in their homes, they also want to have spaces in their home to disconnect from technologies. And other creative method options including really enabling and empowering older adults to create and collect their own lived experiences using technologies. So in this upcoming project funded through MIRA, as we try to capture older women's lived experiences of using cannabis, we're having our older participants create their own cell films, which are videos they create using their own cell phones. And I think these creative visual arts-based methods not only support us in capturing actual lived everyday experiences with technologies, but they're also exciting ways to help us move away from creating technologies for older adults that might inadvertently rely on some of these outdated ageist stereotypes of later life.
Hi everyone, my name is Leah Ravensbergen, and in January I started as an assistant professor in the School of Earth, Environment and Society at McMaster University. My research broadly is interested in how to plan sustainable transportation systems in cities, but to do so in an equitable way, so to make sure that nobody's left behind as we transition to bus use, cycling, or walking in cities. So of course I've done a lot of work on older adults. Today I'm going to be speaking about how and why transportation design is key to building age-friendly cities. I was worried that the tech connection wouldn't be clear, but after what we did before this session, I now feel confident that I'm in the right place. So why am I interested in older adults' mobility? Well, mobility overall is, really a basic human need. We all need to get to the people and the places we need to lead happy and fulfilled lives. And it's particularly important, I think, to older adults. Most older adults in Hamilton and in Canadian cities drive. However, many don't, either because of costs or preferences, like at any age, but also, unfortunately, as people age, many will have to give up the keys as health problems arise. And in car-dependent societies and cities, this giving up of the keys is really associated with a lot of negative problems in health indicators and unmet travel needs and feeling like you're dependent on people, lack of self-worth. So I'm interested in the ways that we can promote other types of travel amongst older people. And the project I'm going to be talking to you today is about older adults in public transport. Is that a possibility? What is it like? What's that lived experience? And I think there's two ways we can think about technology in transport. There's the more obvious tech that gets integrated into transport, and then there's the more less obvious tech in the day-to-day use of public transport, the more design aspect of that. And I think it's fair to say that public transport's becoming more and more tech-heavy in some ways. And the two big ones that participants will talk to me about is how scheduling is done and how paying is done. So to speak quickly about scheduling, knowing when your bus is coming, that's becoming more and more of a priority that's shifting towards apps and away from other types of technologies or more traditional technologies. And there is no one experience of tech and aging. Many older adults are very comfortable with apps. This participant here was, I think, 89 and loved the apps. She told me, my grandmother taught me how to use the bus stop app. I have the Uber app, I have the taxi app, I have it all, I learned how to use it. So we can't assume that aging means we don't like tech. Some are fine with that. But there is some discomfort amongst other older adults with tech, and certain types of tech can be prioritized over others. For instance, a lot of older adults, even those that are comfortable with apps, can't necessarily use them if they don't have a cell phone or a cell phone with data, which is key because data is quite expensive in Canada. So you can do online schedules at home, but a key theme that came up was people being frustrated and feeling like whoever is designing this scheduling doesn't care about people doing it at home. They assume you're either on paper or on an app. Because if you try to download a schedule at home, you have these PDFs and you have to scroll through them and you lose your headings. As this participant said, it doesn't work well online. I have to go for the paper even though I'm tech literate. And finally, I think there will always be a portion of the population, and older adults are probably more represented amongst this, who just want the paper maps. And there's nothing wrong with that. We need to keep that option open. And one of my favorite quotes is somebody telling me, I just like my pieces of paper. I don't want to do the tech. There's nothing wrong with the paper. Why are you taking it away? A second, more obvious piece of tech that can be used in public transport is the paying system. We've recently transitioned in Hamilton away from using tickets towards Presto cards. Some people miss the tickets. There's a feeling, a nice sense of putting your ticket in and paying your fare, dropping it in. But also, there are ways we can design the Presto card system to better suit people with different comfort levels with tech. One thing that came up repetitively, I use Presto cards all the time. They automatically reload. I don't worry about it. I tap it. I know it'll reload on my credit card. But none of my research participants had ever done that. They all reloaded them manually at Fortino's or Shoppers Drug Marts. So worrying about how much you had left on your card is something they didn't have to do when they could see those physical tickets. And unfortunately, the way we've designed it, when you tap that Presto card, your fare, whatever's left on your card, flashes very quickly. So this is something that came up repetitively. So with this new Presto card thing, I try and look and see because it shows you how much is left. And I try to look at that, but it flashes on so fast sometimes, I can't see it. So this is a way that the tech is kind of built around what we assume young or able-bodied people are comfortable with, and not necessarily all segments of the population. So that's my obvious tech. Those are two big technological transitions. We seem to be making buses more tech-heavy. But I think we can think about technology more broadly here. One of the things I did is I asked people to walk me through very slowly everything that goes into making a trip on the bus. And here's some of the things that people can talk about. A common one is getting to the bus stop. The bus journey isn't just the bus, it's getting to the bus and to your final destination. And a key problem has to do with using walkers, especially when sidewalks aren't well removed, the snow isn't well removed. We're getting into that season now, so it's on my mind. This is a key problem that many people mentioned. When the sidewalks aren't shoveled well or they're not, snow removal isn't done adequately, there's real problems with walkers. Then there's also just getting onto the bus. A lot of buses will have this great technology. In Hamilton, they all do, where the front can lower. But not all bus drivers will automatically lower the bus. And then needing to ask to get that bus lowered, or if you need to get on at the back of the bus for any reasons, means you really are not able to use that technology and you have to get onto the bus, which can be challenging. For instance, a participant told me, it's only a couple of inches I have to lift up my walker. It's really not that bad. It's just if I'm not feeling well, it feels like 5 feet. And then when you're on the bus as well, you're integrating with all sorts of aspects of design and technology. One of the ones that came up is in Hamilton, we'll often have the bus stops that are buttons, but we also have the strings. And the strings are actually quite hard to pull for some people. For instance, people mentioned, I find it difficult reaching up to the strings because I have to reach up and twist. There's not enough of these buzzer things that are shoulder length for people to push. So these are just some of the things we don't necessarily think about that all involve these small technological or design decisions that impact people's lived experience using the bus. So in this case, can we design walkers so that they can better get through snow, or that they're lighter but still sturdy to get onto buses? Can we make sure that all of our buses have good lowering and ramp technology and that it happens automatically so people don't have to feel embarrassed about needing to ask for it? When we get into the bus, can we have steps removed so that we don't have to worry about going up or down steps when the bus is in motion? Can we ensure the seating makes sense for people, that they don't have to necessarily ask for it? And can we make sure that those call buttons are accessible to everyone? So my big takeaways, when we think of transport planning and planning design and just urban design in general, we need to think about the potential ageism that can go into how we're integrating this technology into transport planning. Who are we planning cities for? What are we prioritizing when we're planning our bus routes? I think a lot of people aren't necessarily, when they want to promote the bus, thinking about older adults, and they should. And I think we should also keep in mind a flexibility when it comes to public transport and technologies. App-based scheduling is great, but do we have to get rid of or make it harder to get paper hat maps? No, we can keep those options available so that everybody can be happy with the system and it works for all.
I'm going to follow on the same theme in terms of talking about older adults and the use of technology. So my name is Brian Detler. I'm a professor and area chair at the Group School of Business at McMaster University. I'm also proudly a MIRA researcher, and I have a postdoctoral fellow doing research in this space, as well as a few other little projects. And so I'm happy here today to talk about my area of research, which focuses these days on digital literacy, particularly the training needed by older adults to become digitally literate, competent, so that they can thrive and strive in today's digital world. So what do I mean by digital literacy? Well, I love this definition. I use it all the time. It's by my colleague Heidi Julian from the University at Buffalo. It's the set of skills, knowledge, and attitudes required to access, create, use, and evaluate digital information effectively, efficiently, and ethically. So what I like about this definition, there's two aspects. There's the skill set to use technology. So it's how does one use a tablet or a computer or a smartphone successfully. And it's also the skills to access, create, and evaluate information rendered on digital devices. So it's both the information that is digitally rendered, and it's also the technologies. And so a person, in my view, that is digitally literate is competent in both of those skill sets. So an important way of improving digital literacy skills is through training. And such training is important since it provides the skills people need to thrive in today's digital world. And this is especially true of older adults, more so marginalized older adults. I'm thinking of those in social housing, affordable housing, that may not have the financial means or access to even a network or access to digital devices to become digitally literate and to use those devices successfully in their daily lives, to connect socially with others, to access leisure and entertainment information, etc. And what's important is that there's this need to help marginalized groups become digital literate is being taken up by community organizations such as public libraries and social service agencies who offer free training to marginalized groups, especially older adults are a big component of this uptake of that type of training, but they can go to local branches of a public library per se and get the training they need to thrive and be successful digitally. So I'd like just to focus now on a specific project that is MIRA funded. Through MIRA, I've had access to funding to support a postdoctoral fellow. Her name is Caitlin Winia-Balak, and she's doing some great work in conjunction with Hamilton Public Library and City Housing Hamilton. Hamilton Public Library is providing the digital resources and materials to render the training, and the City Housing Hamilton is providing access to this marginalized population of older adults living in social housing. So what Caitlin did, and it goes quite in line with the theme of today, design thinking, is that we want to talk to the end users. We want to know what their needs are. So what the first part of this project was having Caitlin go out to City Housing Hamilton at some food markets that they had back in June and to rally interest in this project. So she had informal conversations with tenants about the concept of digital literacy and invited them to partake in formal interviews. So what happened during that phase, we had 13 interviews with 15 tenants. Most of them were conducted by phone. One was in person. And most were quite, they're elderly. 11 out of 15 were in their 70s or more, and a divide of 6 men and 9 women. So Caitlin used content analysis to render themes from the interviews. These interviews described and analyzed using software that helps pull out categories and codes and identifies key themes. And these were the highlights of her work. Foremost, this framework shows the results. So foremost is number one is wanting to use technology for entertainment and leisure purposes. So older adults want to use these tools for fun, watch a movie, talk to friends is another issue here, social connections, access to information such as health information or government services. So it's all that access and ability to use this technology in that way. Another finding was that there were barriers to using digital technologies for such activity. First was financial. A lot of these people don't have sufficient funds to buy computers or iPhones or tablets to have access to data to actually connect to the internet. There was concern about their safety using these technologies online, as well as the confidence to actually use these technologies successfully and incorrectly. They talked a lot about needing access or help. And what was interesting is they want both formal and informal support. So the formal would be what I talked about previously, access to community organizations such as public libraries that provide free training. But also they rely on informal networks, their friends, their peers, their families, that can actually offer support and coach them through how to use technologies. In terms of how this training is delivered, they preferred one-on-one training sessions, small groups, targeted to a specific application such as privacy or security or how to download a video or how to create a video, how to share a picture with friends. And they also wanted it to be accessible, this training. So some implications come out of that work. First, outreach services and partnerships are important. So what we need is to work with community organizations such as public libraries and other social service agencies to come and deliver this free training to this population that needs these services to thrive and strive in today's world. Public libraries can offer support in terms of providing digital literacy collections and can perhaps tailor their collections and their training materials into languages that these people speak. Not everyone speaks English as their first language. Another component of that is having the training easily transportable or going to the older adults rather than the older adults going to the public library branch, for example. And again, as I mentioned earlier, both formal and informal training supports are needed to really bolster the training and digital literacy skill sets of older populations. So taking this idea away, we're moving into the next phase, and what we would love to do, and it's possible through the McMaster Digital Transformation Research Center, is using this mobile lab. It's a mobile user experience lab, just recently purchased. The plan is to retrofit this lab to house digital training materials, most likely from Hamilton Public Library, and go to the social housing organizations and other seniors places such as City Housing Hamilton, and just show up and offer training on the spot, sort of like a pop-up shop. We'll just advertise, we'll be here on Tuesday afternoons from 2 to 5, drive up, so the training goes to them. And this lab also is built in all the research equipment we need, videos, EEG equipment, biometric testing and sampling, because we really want to study this population as a research project, but also deliver the materials and training to the people that need it the most and just can't get out there to local branches. Another important factor in all of this work, whatever innovative opportunities we think of, is the need to evaluate. And that's an important step that's often forgotten. I've been working in this space, specifically in Hamilton, for many years. There's different groups that are doing some really innovative training things, peer-and-peer, youth training older adults. But the evaluation of these initiatives are not done rigorously, and the results are not shareable. So we really need to think of evaluation components or tools to evaluate the innovative solutions in this space. And I just point to, this is my last slide, this is some work I've done over the years through SSHRC funding, is where we did case study investigations on how community organizations deliver their training to older adults. And we found out, this is through our evaluation of those case studies, we found that there was learning environment factors, program component factors that lead to learning outcomes, behavioral outcomes, and benefit outcomes. And together this all leads to digital literacy training success. So we've got this framework. What we've now done is created surveys for this, and we're rolling them out currently nationally across Canada to public libraries, asking public library administrators and instructors, as well as end users who take the training, about all these factors, just to validate not only this model, but also to get a picture of the landscape in Canada of the success of these different training initiatives.